Proxmox cluster security update. So each one of our containers is an agent and it's hooked up to our Wazuh manager, allowing us to identify vulnerabilities, SSH attacks, and a lot more, and mitigate against those. What's interesting is that if we go to threat hunting, we can see that only in the past 3 days, ever since this was set up, that we've gotten almost 2.5 million authentication failures. And 99.9% of these are malicious authorization attempts. However, we have been mitigating this. In the past 12 hours, we've only had about 5,000 authentication failures, which is a lot less than the 2.5 million from the past 72 hours. Since our hypervisor acts as sort of a jump server to all the other containers, we knew that we would have to mitigate these risks all on the hypervisor instead of the containers. Because from the container point of view, all the traffic comes from the hypervisor, and we can't block the hypervisor's IP or else no one will be able to access their container. On the hypervisor, we added an IP table rule that logs traffic every time a synchronized request is made to one of our SSH ports. Now, when looking at the kernel logs, we can see all the synchronized requests that outside clients are making to internal containers to try to SSH into them. This includes their source IP and their destination port. With these logs set up, we can go into the Wazuh manager and set up a custom decoder. This decoder uses regex and a pre-match to match these SSH new logs. With the regex and the order of variables defined, we can scrape all the information from that synchronized request. Most importantly, the source IP and the destination port, so we know who's trying to connect to what internal port or internal container. With this decoder, we can create a rule, such as 10002, that detects when the decoder of hypervisor SSH brute force is activated. Now, on its own, this rule is not enough to consider a brute force attempt. However, in the next rule, in 60 seconds or less, if 5 or more attempts are made to SSH to the same container from the same source IP, we consider that a brute force attempt. From there, we set a new active response block in our config file that targets that specific brute force rule, and if it's matched, we execute the firewall drop command. This firewall drop is a custom shell script that scrapes the source IP and then creates a new IP tables rule to drop all of that traffic belonging to that source IP, both in the input and the forward chain. And after about 12 hours of this running, we've already collected a few dozen different IP addresses that we're trying to brute force. Most of these are from overseas. As a result, since this was implemented about this time, we've seen a large decrease in SSH brute force attempts, helping to make the cluster more secure.